everybody. I'm Christina Early. I'm the board secretary of Democrats of Greater Tucson. We'd like to thank y'all for coming. I'd like to thank our speakers. We've got a great topic tonight, gun violence and gun safety, and how can we make reforms. We've all been touched one way or another by gun violence, and we hope that this discussion with this wonderful panel will give us some insights. We have 3 panelists this evening. Our panelist tonight is Kelley Ireland is going to start us off, and she's with Moms Demand Action. She's also the co-lead in the Moms Demand Action's Be Smart arm of that organization. We're very excited to have her here today, and she herself has been a survivor of gun violence, and she offers peers support for other survivors. The trauma that's involved with gun violence affects so many people. We also have Pete Plahmer. He's the Trauma Outreach and Injury Prevention Coordinator with Banner Health. He's a trauma nurse. Pete is on a multi-professional gun violence work group, which includes members from the County Attorney's Office, the County Mental Health Department, TPD, and a lot of others that he'll tell us about. Then our third panelist is Teresa Neiberg. She's also with Moms Demand Action. She is the legislative lead, and she will give us an update on that. So let's go ahead and get that started. So Kelley, the floor is yours, and I'll bring up your PowerPoint.
Hi, everybody. How are you all doing? As Teresa said, my name is Kelley Ireland. I am with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And I wanted to just kind of give a very brief overview of what it is, because a lot of people don't really know what it is exactly that we do. I had a friend a couple of years ago who said, gee, I didn't know that this was, even a thing. I thought you just got together with a bunch of local moms and, just got together for wine. And so what was funny about this comment was that I had just come back with, oh my goodness, I think there were about 2,000 of us who marched to Washington, D.C. Capitol and to the White House after the Dayton and El Paso shootings happened when we were in Washington, D.C. for a convention. So I said, well, you might want to turn on your news and see that it is a big deal. And no, it's not a bunch of women wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth. What we say about Moms Demand Action is that it's not just for moms, it's for everybody who's had a mom. So we're always happy to have men in Moms Demand. We have quite a few of them. We also have gun violence survivors. We have allies for the gun sense movement, and we have a lot of did I say gun violence survivors in the group. So we always tease our gentlemen friends who join us, and we always say that they're man enough to be a mom. Next. So who are we? We're part of a movement of about 10 million Americans, and we work together to end gun violence and build safer communities. Moms Demand Action, along with Mayors Against Illegal Guns and Students Demand Action, are all a part of Everytown. So we're underneath the Everytown umbrella, and we are the grassroots arm of Everytown. Many of you may or may not know that Moms Demand Action was founded by Shannon Watts, who was a mom who was just horrified after the Sandy Hook shooting, and she just started a Facebook page thinking after she searched and couldn't really find much of anything, just, I want to get together with a group of concerned mothers and see if anybody out there feels like I feel about this. And it just went ballistic, and there were people that joined, and now again we're at about 10 million. I want people to understand this is a misnomer, I guess you would call it, about Moms Demand Action. We are not anti-gun, and we are not anti-Second Amendment. We know that gun sense laws can coexist with the Second Amendment, And we know that gun sense laws save lives. So that's a really important thing for people to understand, because a lot of times that's what we're tabbed with. It's just people that want to take away their guns. Next. These are just a few gun violence facts. There are many, 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 and I didn't want to bore you with a whole bunch of percentages and things, because I could go on all night about this. But these are a few gun violence facts. There are more than 110 gun deaths each day, and for every one, at least 2 or more people are injured, often permanently. We have a legislator, Jen Longden, in the House right now, who is a gun violence survivor. She was the victim of a random shooting. She and her fiance were shot in their vehicle as they were at a stop sign, and she's injured for life. She's a paraplegic, and she has run for office to try to change gun bills. Mass shootings make up a small percentage of the more than 45,000 gun deaths in America. That's what we hear about all the time, are the mass shootings. And, you know, because they're so horrific and so many people are killed and injured in those, those are the things that make the news. Mass shootings only count, quote unquote, when 4 or more people are shot and killed, excluding the shooter. So there are a lot of shootings that happen that are single shootings, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people are killed, but they don't constitute a mass shooting unless 4 or more are shot and killed. So gun violence has become normalized in the United States. Anything that we watch on television typically has a lot of gun violence in it. And I was sitting around talking to somebody from another country, Sweden, and I was talking about, the subject came around to Westerns. And of course, the Swedes really liked our Westerns back in the day. And I grew up watching them, and every one of them involved a gun, and that's how things were solved, was with guns. And that's still going on today. To date, there have been 370 mass shootings in the 207 days of 2022. This was yesterday. So there probably are more today, because they change sometimes 2 and 3 at a time. And it seems that over weekends, they really spike. But we're at about 2 mass shootings a day. So think about it, 370 mass shootings in the 207 days. And that's just mass shooting. That's not, we're not even capturing single shootings, double shootings, and so on. Next. Of 25,188 gun deaths, 13,662 of those were suicides. So it used to be, or was at one time, that about 2/3 of gun deaths were suicides. Now it's about half. There were 22,130 people injured. Now, I grew up in a town of about 8,000 to 10,000 people here in Arizona. 22,000 people is a lot of people. 45,000 that died last year is a city the size of Carson City, Nevada. It's an incredible amount of people to die every year. And when we look at children, children killed aged 0 to 11, there were 194. There are typically about 350 little children killed every year of this age range, but we're only part of the way through the year. And 432 of those kids were injured, and that could be permanently. The number of kids killed age 12 to 17, there were 764, and 2,074 that were injured. Police officers killed, 41, injured 213. We hear so much about backing the blue and how much we care about our police, and we do care about them, but 41 of them have died this year. 213 are injured, possibly permanently. Suspects killed or injured by police, 491. Unintentional shootings, 871. Unintentional shootings. So that means that a toddler picked up a gun out of dad's underwear drawer, or somebody was cleaning a gun and it went off in their house and struck someone, or somebody crossed the street and just took a bullet that was meant for someone else. So there are all kinds of things that fit under that umbrella. Murder-suicides account for 405 people having died. And I get these sources off of gunviolencearchive.org, and they keep a real-time update of these deaths and injuries. So it's a really good, I look at it all the time, and you know, I try to keep track of everything that's going on, because it's just incredible that this is happening in our country. Next. So we have some goals in Moms Demand Action. We have more goals than this, but these are the top ones. We advocate for stronger laws and policies that will reduce gun violence. And we want to keep guns out of the wrong hands. So we need desperately a better background check system. So we know that licensed gun dealers, and there are 1,463 of those in Arizona. Those are licensed gun dealers. They do have to do background checks. And when we tell people that we want to have universal background checks, that encompasses private sellers. Right now, if I decided to sell you a gun out of the trunk of my car, I could do that without any problem, and you might be a felon. But I wouldn't care, because I could sell you the gun and then you'd have the gun. So we want everybody to have to run background checks. And when you tell people that that is what we want, universal background checks, more often than not, people will say, well, we already have that, but we don't have it universally. We have it for licensed gun dealers. Another goal we have is protecting kids and communities, red flag laws, and responsible access to firearms. So red flag laws happen to be laws that some states have. The last time I looked, 17 states had red flag laws. There may be more now. Arizona, of course, is not one of them. But those are laws that would remove access to firearms from dangerous people and domestic abusers. And there is a due process for that. It's not like somebody can just come into your house and take your guns away if somebody says that, you're dangerous. There is due process. Another goal we have, addressing America's uniquely lethal domestic abuse problem. That would be disarming domestic abusers. So that is a real problem in this state. We have a lot of gun deaths, not just in this state, all over our nation with domestic abusers. Another goal is combating daily gun violence, supporting research and local solutions. So I've been lucky enough to be on a board with the Veterans Administration. I used to work there and retired from the VA. And I'm on their mental health coalition there, even though I'm retired. Next. So we have Teresa here tonight, who's gonna come on and tell you about these. So I'm just gonna let you take a look at it real quickly. Unfortunately, instead of being proactive in Arizona and really trying to institute some gun sense laws and get those things passed, because of the makeup of the legislature and Senate we have, all we can do is defend why these bills should not pass. And the way that we do that is through showing up at the State House and Senate and testifying as to why these are not good laws, why they would endanger lives, why they would end up killing people. And that is how can I say this and be, well, it's a fight. It's a dog fight. We don't have support from those folks, not the ones that are currently there. Yes, we have some wonderful Democratic leaders there that are trying to keep these bills from going as laws, but all we can do is play defense. And so Teresa's going to go into this in more detail, and I just wanted to touch on it right now. Next. So we're volunteers. We show up and get things done. We organize events. This is just some of the stuff we do. Can you go back? We organize events, make phone calls, we sign petitions, go to marches. We call on state and national lawmakers to enact common gun sense laws that will protect our kids and will encourage local businesses to help us create a culture of responsible gun ownership. We vote on gun bills using RTS, and we show up and speak at state and Senate hearings on bad bills. We have what we call a rapid response team. And it is not uncommon for somebody to call us and say, can you get in a car and drive to Phoenix tomorrow and be there at 9 o'clock for a hearing on such and such a bill? We also speak on panels locally at businesses and schools with first responders, and we partner with other agencies to support them. As Christina said in the beginning, I belong to the education arm of Be Smart. I was a trainer for the Veterans Administration. I was a national trainer, and I thought that I could put that training to use in the Be Smart or the education arm. And what Be Smart focuses on is safe gun storage. And we use the acronym SMART. The S stands for secure your gun. All guns and homes and vehicles need to be secured. The M in SMART is model responsible behavior around guns. Don't leave them laying around. Don't leave them in dad's underwear drawer. Don't leave them in the nightstand. Don't leave them under your pillow. Lock them up and separate them from the ammunition. The A in SMART is ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. So when your children or grandchildren go to visit somebody else, have that conversation with them, because you would certainly speak up if your child had a peanut allergy. They would be asking about that. So it's really important to ask about the presence of firearms in their homes, and to also ask if they lock them up, because that's the only way that is going to be a safe visit for those children. The R in SMART stands for recognize the risks of teen suicide and recognize the roles guns play in teen suicides. Teenagers' brains are not developed, and they do not have the capacity to really understand as children the ramifications of what it means to take a gun and shoot themselves. And until a child is up in their 20s, especially male children, that frontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed. So that's another reason raising the age to buy guns is important. If it were up to me, I'd raise it higher than 21, because I know what I know about the brain development now. And then the T in Be Smart is tell your peers about Be Smart. So we do go out to festivals, we go to health fairs, we go to private businesses, we go to schools, and we go to basically anybody that will have us, and we present our program for free about safe gun storage. And when we're out in public, we table at festivals, and we give away free gun locks provided to us by the Pima County Attorney's Office and the Veterans Administration. And we also give out pamphlets, brochures, and we talk to parents about their responsibility, not the child's responsibility, to secure their firearms. Because we hear a lot of people say, well, you know, they know not to go near the guns. It's not their responsibility, it's the parents. So we also call on corporate leaders and influencers to create and demand change. Next. Some other things that we do, we really try to help out during election times. We canvass, we phone bank to help gun sense candidates get elected. We educate parents and adults on safe firearm storage, which is the Be Smart program. And we are the ones in the red shirts. So if you see us out and about, we'd love for you to join us. Next. This is how you can join. And you can text the word join to 64433. You can attend our meetings to learn more about us. You can write letters to the editor, to your elected officials. We always need crafters, sign makers, quilters. We support and attend political fundraisers, and we help candidates canvass and phone bank. We visit our state houses and Senate and discuss the measures that can be taken with our elected officials. We always need data input people. We need planners, organizers, and leaders. We need people on our rapid response team to go down to the state house and Senate and speak against bad gun bills. Gun violence survivors can become part of the Everytown Survivor Network. I am part of that. I am a gun violence peer supporter, and only another gun violence survivor knows what it's like to be one. And when we speak of survivors, that doesn't necessarily mean that you were shot. It can mean that you are the loved one of somebody who died by suicide or homicide. So we're made up of all different kinds of people who have suffered all different kinds of terrible experiences. If you are a photographer, a musician, an artist, speaker, we hold yearly and sometimes spontaneous events. And we always need people to table at local events for either Moms Demand Action or Be Smart. So there's a lot of ways that people can be involved without necessarily, some of it is you don't even have to leave home to do. So next. Again, this tells you how to join. And here's what happens with us. Every time that there's a mass shooting, people turn out to our meetings in droves. I mean droves. And what people don't realize, it says here, ending gun violence is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we need your help. So what is difficult for us to get across in our message is, when you come and you join Moms Demand Action, we aren't going to make a difference this week or next month or maybe even during the whole year. We have to fight and we have to keep going. And that's what we do. We keep going. Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. And I hope that I didn't go too far outside my time frames.
Oh, you're perfect. All right. Great. Thank you, Kelley, so much. Is it possible, since you gave me that PowerPoint, is it possible for us to send this out to our attendees tonight?
Sure. I just kind of made it on the fly. It's not on our official logo stuff or anything like that, but it's just information. So
it's a lot of good information. So, okay, if you don't mind, then, and if our attendees want it, I'll be sure and send it out after this. Okay, great. So now we're going to hear from Pete, the coordinator of the Outreach and Injury Prevention for Banner Health. So Pete, you have the floor. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to come speak for you. A little bit about myself. I started my healthcare career in about 2003, working in primarily ER trauma and as a flight nurse. So I've been involved in healthcare for about 20 years. And before that, I was in law enforcement as a frontline officer in the Midwest for a little over 16 years before I transitioned into this. So yeah, currently I am the new trauma outreach coordinator and injury prevention person at Banner University. So I work out of the trauma department kind of both with the hospital as well as with the doctors and the faculty on the university side as well. So it's kind of a multifaceted position, and I'm getting out there and we're doing a bunch of different things. So right there, if you someone wants to reach out to me, I have my email up for my work there. So I'm going to go over just some of our local statistics, and these statistics may vary from the ones that you guys pull off of different websites. These are specifically from our hospital. We at Banner we're the only American College of Surgeons, a level 1 trauma center in Southern Arizona. So we are serving a population of all the way from Yuma, Santa Cruz, Cochise, Graham, Greenlee, Pinal, sometimes Maricopa, pretty much all of the counties, but primarily Southern Arizona. St. Joe's has recently become a trauma center, and so I can't speak to their numbers, but these are what we have coming into our facility over the last 6 years. So a total in the last 6 years, we've had about 1,600 gunshot victims come through our trauma center. And as you can see, 2016, 2017, 18, pretty much the same. 2019, we had a little uptick. 2020 was the same. And then for some reason, not sure if this has anything to do with everybody being cooped up and the mental health issues with COVID, but as you can see, 2021, we had a rise, and that was our biggest year in the last 6 with 285. And this year, as of yesterday, we had seen 73 gunshot victims in the trauma center. So 1,300 of those plus males, a little over 200 are females. Obviously, Pima County is our biggest provider of gunshot victims, unfortunately. We do get some from the other, one of the interesting areas is the international, if you notice that. So one of my previous jobs was I was a flight nurse with Arizona Lifeline, and our base was down in Douglas, Arizona, and our base was basically butted up against the international border fence. And so we not only transported a lot of trauma patients that were delivered to the international border checkpoint, but a lot of medical and sick patients as well. So, but yeah, 31 of those have come from the border over the last 6 years. So kind of an interesting bit of information. Of those 1,600, we like to, we do a pretty good job of treating all injuries at our location. So almost 1,400 of those 1,600 survived, a little over 200 deceased. And then it's broken down. So one of the responsibilities as a trauma center is we have to report all types of trauma injuries, all the various injuries to the National Trauma Data Bank. And so all these injuries get broken down into different categories. And so I've highlighted some of the most common. So the gunshot wounds resulting from assaults were about little over 900. Unintentional, 350 about. And again, these are going back for the last 6 years as that total number. So unintentional, Kelley kind of spoke about it earlier. Some of those are people who are shot by accident. Some of these are people who typically, and anyone who's ever worked in emergency medicine, it's kind of a humorous aspect, but we'll get people who come in who indicate that they were cleaning their gun when it accidentally went off, and they shot themselves in the foot or the hand or the leg. And it's interesting because, you know, anyone who has worked around guns, been around guns, the first thing you ever learn is you treat every gun as it's loaded. And if you're going to be working around it, cleaning it, maintaining it, first thing you do is ensure that it's unloaded. So when these people come in and say, hey, I was cleaning my gun, we have to actually question that story. So the self-inflicted, 166, undetermined, those can be some of the deceased individuals that maybe are found out in the desert, and the medical examiner cannot make a determination, homicide, suicide, and so it's just classified as other. Moving on, as we look, 400 and almost 500 of those were handguns. 400 were unspecified. And I guess what we mean by that is we have a lot of gang violence. And so many times we're unable to determine the type of weapon that was used when we have victims brought in either by personally owned vehicles or even by EMS. They just say, hey, I was walking down the street minding my own business when I was shot. So the intentional, and then we broke it down even a little bit more with the intentional self-harm or suicide with a handgun, 140. Assaults with a rifle, 10. Hunting accidents by rifle, about the same at 9. And then assault and accidents by shotgun were equally divided at about 16. And then the self-harm with a shotgun was about 11. So the dispositions of gun violence patients in our facility over the last 6 years, we've had 874 of those individuals had to be admitted due to their wounds and follow-up care. 120 passed away, didn't make it out of the trauma bay. And then we had over 500 that were discharged from the ER, the trauma bay, and that they were minor wounds and could be treated either right there or in the ER and then followed up in clinic by the staff. A little over 350 had to go to the operating room for their wounds. 226 of those were admitted to the med surgical floor, which is an inpatient floor. Almost 200 had to go to the intensive care unit, and then 100 were just admitted for overnight observation, just to make sure there wasn't any complications after they were initially treated in the trauma bay. So on a national perspective, I went and did some research, and I looked at a couple of different studies that I took one from the West Coast, one from Middle America, and one from Johns Hopkins. We just had our Southwest Regional Trauma Conference a couple of weeks ago, and one of our keynote speakers was Dr. Sakrin, who is a trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and he is a gun violence advocate. He has been in Congress promoting gun laws, and he, in his younger years during college, he was a victim of gun violence himself, and that's what precipitated him to become a trauma surgeon and then become a person of interest in regards to expanding common sense laws on gun control. So and these are a couple of years old. We always like to go back when we're looking at evidence-based research. We like to go back no further than 5 years. So all three of these were 2017 studies, and the Stanford study showed that in America we spend $735 million per year for initial hospitalization. So those are the costs that are incurred by gunshot victims going to the ER, your trauma centers. The Iowa study, University of Iowa, looked at the admission patients. And so if you need admission to either the ICU or med surg or overnight obs, that is costing $622 million per year. And then the Johns Hopkins study looked at the total cost per year, and it was a $3 billion cost. And again, these came out in 2017, and the data for that was probably looked at before 2017. So you have to assume that all of these costs have increased exponentially with the increase in gun violence over the years. So, and the other costs that are associated, so it says here the 10 years examined by the research, uninsured patients and those with Medicare, Medicaid accounted for over 2/3 of our firearm related stays. So what we find typically are victims of gunshot wounds are either underinsured, either with Medicare, Medicaid, or like in Arizona here with access, or they have no insurance at all. And so then those costs are then relayed to the public. Hospitals do budget for what they call charity care each year, but that amount of money doesn't come close to covering what is seen in the emergency and the trauma centers. And of course, that money also goes towards not just gun violence, but other traumas and other sick individuals that are sick with medical indications as well. So when you look at the socioeconomic costs, these numbers here, this research does not account for the costs that go to the families, the victims, the employers, and the rest of the community in things such as lost wages, people who don't show up to work because they're hurt, small businesses, the list just goes on and on. So the costs just aren't from a medical aspect. I think some of the socioeconomic costs sometimes are more hurtful than the healthcare costs. Some of the things that are emerging in trauma care is we do a really good job of fixing people. The issue that we have identified over the years and that we're trying to, one of the things we haven't been able to fix is the backside of trauma, and that is the mental health aspect and the recovery. Most of these people, I think Kelley, one of the slides indicated that the majority of all trauma patients, whether it's gun violence or otherwise, have issues with mental health and recovery, sometimes for the rest of their life. So there is a trend emerging called trauma-informed care. And what it is involving social workers right from the moment that patient swings through the doors of the trauma bay. And then those needs of the trauma patient mentally are met going forward as they try to heal and recover. And I've got it written down there. The goal of informed care is to realize the widespread impact of trauma, and then to understand all the paths for recovery. Recognizing the signs and symptoms of trauma in the patients, the families, as well as the staff that work in trauma on a day-to-day basis. And then to integrate that knowledge about trauma into policies and procedures that then change our practice in how we treat these patients as well as their families and each other as professionals in the trauma setting. And then actively attempt to come up with strategies to avoid re-traumatization, which is an issue that I'll speak about further in a minute. Yes, I had just become a member of the Gun Violence and Firearms Work Group. Christina indicated that it is a multidisciplinary group that includes members of the Pima County Mental Health, the Attorney's Office, Tucson Police, the owner of Diamondback Shooting Sports, myself, as well as my counterpart from the South Campus. And we're trying to incorporate more social workers from the hospital setting. However, working for a hospital, resources and finances are limited. So to expand programs, I'm sure you're all aware, is sometimes an uphill battle. But this is a group that we are meeting every 5 weeks. It's a fairly new group. We have come up with a number of different strategies, which they're looking to implement. So these are some of the reasons that this group has come together. The costs, and like I said, 2/3 of gun violence survivors, and I think it's higher than that. The information that Kelley had indicated, I think, was even a higher incidence of survivors are reaching out for mental health support, legal assistance as crime victims, because I know a lot of communities and agencies will hand a card out to a victim of a crime and say, hey, this is your case number. You may be eligible for, some financial recuperation after, if person's brought to justice, et cetera. However, I don't know what the numbers are as far as people being financially put back to where they were. I don't think it's a very high percentage. So people are reaching out for financial assistance because of the fact that most of these gun violence victims have little or no insurance. And then the amount of money that is spent and then they are billed is astronomical. So, and of course, they're also looking for assistance in outpatient therapies, physical and mental, because the work sometimes with these patients goes on for weeks, months, and years afterwards. So some of the strategies that have been identified by the new work group are to bring training to the firearms dealers in Pima County. Because like you alluded to earlier, right now, Arizona does not have a red flag law. However, we are working with the gun owners and bringing training to each one to provide their staff and how to recognize people that may be presenting physical cues that they are having suicidal or homicidal ideation. And then if that's recognized, they will not be selling weapons to these individuals, and they're going to in turn make available to them pamphlets, handouts, phone numbers, etc. At least offer them the opportunity to reach out to someone professionally. And then, of course, as of the 16th of, I think it was the 16th of July, nationwide, we went with the new 988 hotline. Unlike other suicide and mental health hotlines, you will not be put on hold. There will be someone who answers at the other end of the line when you dial that number. So that is something that is positive. So one of the other strategies that they came up with that they're looking at, and like I said, these are all ideas that are being kicked around by the group. These are not things that are being implemented as of yet, but they did do some research and found that by providing training to gun owners and residents that live in areas that are socioeconomically depressed, a lot of times these people grow up in crime-ridden areas and they are more prevalent to become either victims of crime or criminals. And so the idea was to reach out to these communities and say, hey, on Saturday at 9 o'clock at the Walgreens or the library at 36th and Keno, we're going to be doing a gun safety class. It's free. And so those are some of the things, because the studies show that if you can at least educate people about gun safety, you can not make a huge dent, but you may reduce gun violence by a little bit. And every little bit helps, right? Because we're all here as a grassroots efforts to try to reduce gun violence, and anything that we can do can hopefully help. So that is one of the other things. They want to improve and strengthen post-prevention strategies through outreach by those affected by gun violence, including witnesses, family members, and others. And that's where we are looking to increase the amount of social workers involved in victims of gun violence, as well as their families, intimate partners, and others. I know the City of Tucson Police Department has written for a $2 million grant that would be specifically for that strategy in providing post-care in the form of mental health counseling. Because the reason for that is studies have also shown that once you're a victim of gun violence, your prevalence to stay in that circle of violence is very high, and to break out of it is very difficult. So we're hoping that by getting this informed trauma care and more mental health screening and post-care, that we break some of these people out of this cycle. So one of the other, couple of the other strategies, engaging with individuals post-criminal justice encounters related to guns and gun violence to prevent recidivism. So if you have someone who has committed a gun felony or an offense related to guns, can we identify these people? Can we reach out to them? And are they a candidate to be educated so that they don't repeat this type of violence? So, and again, resources and training in regards to intimate partner violence. This is a huge issue, especially where there are guns and other weapons contained within the households where these people live. So that is always ongoing training. Like I said, the police department has written for a grant to help funding with some of these strategies. And hopefully we hear soon about that. I guess it was a very competitive grant, so they were on the fence 50-50 about getting this to them. So I had made some notes. Oh yeah, one of the other strategies that was brought up and includes some of our trauma faculty that have come from other areas where these strategies have worked is what they call wraparound strategies, where a multi-professional group goes into the socioeconomically depressed areas or where we have hotspots identified with a lot of gun violence. And we look at the issues such as who's unemployed, who needs insurance, who needs gun locks, who needs whatever, and is that something that this group can provide? And then not just go out there for one day and say, hey, we're here to help, what can we do? But this is going to be a continuous ongoing strategy. And they've done these in cities like Detroit and some of the other areas. And like I said, they're called wraparound strategies. And basically the professionals in the community are wrapping around these individuals that are at need, providing them the resources in order to reduce not just gun violence, but unemployment, other types of crime and everything, and increase education, identify students that aren't in school or that may be candidates to go to a community college, et cetera. There's all kinds of different resources. So I don't want to go on and on, but hopefully you get the idea. One of the things that we do at Banner is we are a program that we are part of the Stop the Bleed campaign. And we go out and we teach lay people how to control life-threatening bleeding. The Stop the Bleed campaign is a national campaign that arose out of the Sandy Hook shooting in 2011. And the issue was there was a lot of children that were bleeding and a lot of lay people that watched them bleed that didn't know what to do, wanted to do something, but didn't know what to do. And if they would have had a little bit of knowledge, they would have increased the survivability of some of those patients that unfortunately perished. So this is a great campaign, and what we do is groups come to us for the training. We identify other groups. We just did one on Saturday. And basically what we do is we go out and we teach people how to control life-threatening hemorrhage by either direct pressure or the use of tourniquets until EMS gets there and can take over that patient care. You're finding that if you go out to TIA, everybody's familiar with the automatic electric defibrillators now that are on the walls. If people drop and are unconscious, unresponsive, have no heartbeat, these stop the bleed packs are being posted on the walls in public areas now as well, and you'll find them at the airport. So if you would like more information about us coming out and doing a group Stop the Bleed class, please feel free to reach out to me. I put my office phone number, and again, my email is right there. And so, yeah, so with that, hopefully I've enlightened you guys about what we see at the trauma center at Banner, and you know, it's specific to our community only, and some of the things that we're trying to work on with other professionals in the community to try to reduce gun violence. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to your questions in a little bit.
Great. Thanks, Pete. That was that was really informative. And I don't know, there was almost a little spark of hope in there that maybe there's some policies and procedures coming in that are going to help our communities.
Yeah,
We're going to, yeah, I hope so. We're going to just, there's a couple of questions in the chat that Joe's going to ask here. And then we will change gears and go to the legislative side with Teresa in a couple of minutes. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, yep, Pete, this is from Susie Anderson. What kind of research is being done in the School of Public Health across the nation to provide data for gun violence as a public health issue? Do you have any results?
Yeah, I think there is a plethora of research going on, and any university that's involved in academic medicine has a duty and a responsibility to identify trends in their communities that are identified as issues, and then do research on how to reduce those issues. So for an example, other than gun violence, one of the examples here is we're doing study on how do we reduce the amount of pedestrians being struck by motor vehicles. And so we're researching different avenues on how to try to make the streets safer, how to keep people off the streets, etc. So yeah, there is a vast amount of data out there. It's just knowing where to pull from. But if you go to academic teaching facilities like Johns Hopkins, the University of Arizona, the Medical College of Wisconsin, other academic facilities, you should be able to Google. And then one of the great websites is the National Public Information. It's part of the National Institute of Health. It's called PubMed. Any articles that are under PubMed are vetted and peer reviewed. And those are great articles to get data from.
Great. Got another question for you from Rod Norrish. Does law enforcement investigate every gunshot event, or is that only done at your request?
No, actually, they have to investigate every gunshot wound, unless it is out in an outlying community and the person doesn't come in and get treated. But we as healthcare professionals in the emergency department, whether or not you're a nurse, a paramedic, or a doctor, social worker, we are by state law mandated reporters. And so anytime someone shows up with a gunshot wound, a stab wound, intimate partner violence, elder abuse, child abuse, we have a legal responsibility to report that to law enforcement if they're not already involved.
Great. Well, back to you, Christina. We'll have more later.
Okay, great. Thanks. That gave everybody a little bit of a break. So now we're really interested to hear from Teresa. I'm hoping I'm saying your last name right. Neiberg. Please correct me.
It's Neiberg. It
Neiberg.
defies those grammar rules. Yeah.
So we're excited that you're here. We're looking forward to what we can do legislative. So please take over.
Okay, thank you for having me. As stated earlier, I'm the Moms Demand Action State Legislative Lead. And so I'm going to go over with you a little bit that happened at the legislative session this past session. So let me see here. Okay, so this is the 2020 Arizona State Legislative Review. So the good bills that we had this past session, some Democratic gun sense legislators, Representative Jennifer Longden that Kelley talked about a little earlier, Representative Daniel Hernandez, Representative Andrea D'Alessandro, Senator Martin Quesada, Senator Leila Alston, and Senator Sally Ann Gonzalez. Between all of them, they introduced 15 gun sense bills and one resolution, which covered background check loopholes, verifying the validity of concealed carry permits, requiring pediatric healthcare workers to provide gun safety information. We would have been able to have a red flag bill. We would have been able to hold adults accountable if firearms are not safely secured. Some of these bills would have made safe storage devices tax-free. We would have had restraining orders. We would have made bump stocks illegal. We could have had a bill that would require surrendering of concealed carry weapons if someone was sentenced. We would have had a waiting period when purchasing a firearm. But unfortunately, none of the good gun bills received a hearing by the Arizona legislative majority, which is the House and Senate, which was the House and Senate Republicans. And on May 31st, 2022, after the Uvalde shooting, Senator Quesada used a procedural motion to waive the requirement for a committee hearing on gun sense legislation on the Senate floor. So that would have allowed him to debate a gun sense bill right there on the Senate floor. But the Senate Republicans voted down that chance to debate a bill on gun sense legislation, even right after this horrific event. So that's kind of what we were dealing with this session. And instead of having hearings on those good bills that would have made Arizona a safer place to live, the Arizona legislative majority, that is the House and Senate Republicans, introduced bills that would allow concealed carry in public places and events such as libraries, community centers, zoos, festivals, marches. Many of these places were where we would find lots of children. They would have allowed loaded weapons in school parking lots. They would have required middle and high school students to learn about the use and safe handling of firearms, which might sound like a good idea, but it mandated that they would use an NRA program that has been proven to be unsuccessful. They wanted to reduce the age of a person to have a concealed weapon permit to age 18 years. And also, just as a note, Arizona doesn't have a very strong concealed weapon permit training at all, and then lowering it to 18 years of age would have been a very bad thing. And they would have also allowed concealed carry on college campuses. They would have allowed property owners to use deadly force to prevent criminal damage, such as graffiti, to their property. This would have greatly expanded the Arizona Stand Your Ground bill. They wanted to prevent taxing and restricting all kinds of firearms, which was a nullification bill. They wanted to exempt guns and ammunition from sales tax. Now, part of the bill would have exempted gun locks and gun safes, but that wasn't enough good to outweigh the bad in this bill. And they would have prohibited the state or any public entity from contracting with a company unless the company agrees not to discriminate against a firearm entity. As Kelley mentioned, none of those bad gun bills made it to the governor's desk this year. And that was definitely a victory. But we know that those bad gun bills will be back, and we know that good common sense gun bills won't have a chance if something doesn't change. So right now, Moms Demand Action volunteers are working hard to have candidates up and down the ballot complete a Gun Sense candidate questionnaire. And this is the first time we were able to offer this opportunity to down ballot races. So if anyone in your organization knows of candidates that you think might be interested in becoming a Gun Sense candidate, please let me know in the chat. The Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate distinction lets voters know which candidates will stand up for gun safety if elected into office. Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action volunteers across the country have been distributing these questionnaires to candidates to ensure that those with the Gun Sense candidate distinction will advocate for safer communities. These candidates have proven that they will support strong gun laws. And so you can find Gun Sense candidates using the link that I have there, and I will drop that in the chat at the end of the presentation so that anyone can go on the link and put in their address and find out who your Gun Sense candidates are. And as of the end of July, this is a list of the Gun Sense candidates that we already have in Arizona. So they start at the federal level and go through the state level, which is all that we used to have. But now we can have other state candidates that are listed there: Governor, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, Attorney General, and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We can also have mayors and city council members, county offices such as the Maricopa County Attorney or any other county attorney, and all the way down to school board members. So, you know, as you can see, we don't have a lot of the mayor and city council members. We have some school board members, but there are a lot more. So if there's anyone, like I said, that knows of any candidates you think would make a good Gun Sense candidate, please let me know. So if we're able to elect a Democratic governor and a Democratic majority at the Arizona legislature, we will be able to work with legislators who will stand up for gun safety. However, if we are not able to elect a Democratic governor and Democratic majority at the Arizona legislature, we fear that some of the newly elected Republican legislators will not be open to working with us to pass gun sense legislation. So we'll start, as soon as we know who our legislators and our governor are going to be, we'll work with our legislative team here in the state with our gun sense candidates in every town for creative ways to work towards gun sense legislation. And we will be working with community partners and stakeholders. And we're always looking for new community partners. So again, if anyone knows of any community partners that may be willing to work with us, please let me know that as well. So I just want to say thank you for having me here to speak to you. And I appreciate the time that you have. And if you have any questions about how you can help out, I know Kelley already put into the chat the ways to get involved with Moms Demand Action. That's a first step. But if there's anyone that would be interested in actually being on our rapid response team or being part of our legislative team, please let me know as well. And I can put my email in the chat.
Great,
So
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I went ahead and dropped the gunsensevoter.org/candidates in the chat for you. And please put your email, because the folks that are on this call, we're all involved. We all want to figure out what we can do to help, because we wouldn't be on this call if we didn't care. And so let's see, I'm thinking we've got a lot of questions in the chat. So we've got plenty of time. So drop your questions in the chat if you want, and Joe or Susie will answer. We'll ask those for you so we can get some answers. So Joe, go ahead and take it away.
Right. Well, let's get right to it there, Teresa. Can you name the names of the worst Arizona legislators when it comes to gun sense?
Well, most of them. So there were a few that really worked with us. So that's somewhat subjective. So what I can do is provide to your organization a list of the bad gun bills this past legislative session, the sponsors and the co-sponsors, and that should give everyone a good idea of who the ones are that are not working with us.
A good answer, good answer. So here's one from Rod Norrish and Teresa. He asked, is your organization represented by both major political party members in equal numbers, or is it mainly Democrats?
Well, we have Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and all the other parties as part of our organization across the country. We have, gun owners, non-gun owners, and just it goes on and on. We have so many members that have all different interests, but I feel that my personal thoughts in this state, for sure, most of our members are Democratic members.
Okay, and then Rod Norris had another question. Is economic income equality the key to reducing, solving gun shooting events?
I'm not so sure that income equality is the key. However, we do find an uptick in violence, gun violence and other violence in our socioeconomically depressed areas. There is an obvious correlation. We have more gang violence on the south side of Tucson, more unemployment, people with very low incomes or no incomes. And so that all plays a part of it. And so that's why one of those strategies that I talked about, that wraparound strategy where you get a bunch of professionals going into the community, identifying people with needs. And some of those needs are employment, that we can try to start enabling some of these people to help pick them up and get them to where they need to be more financially sound and secure in their environments.
Okay, Kelley, how about a question? This is from Kirk Alexander. Does MDA attend gun shows?
Actually, we do not, at least not here in Tucson. We're usually not a welcome entity at gun shows. We have talked about and would like to have a Be Smart table to hand out information about safe gun storage and to hand out gun locks, but that has not materialized, at least here in Tucson.
Okay, thank you. This is from Susie Anderson. What kind of legislation is happening to control the more destructive types of ammunition?
In our state, there's nothing happening right now. And on the federal level, Moms Demand Action in Everytown hasn't taken a stand on assault weapons and that type of ammunition that I know of, but I can certainly get more information on that to the organization. And if Kelley has any more information on that, please add.
Okay, well, that's it for our questions, and great answers, and really appreciate all the good information. Christina, back to you.
Okay, great. So I do have one more question, and Susie has a question. So I have one question for you, Kelley, or Teresa. Do you think that protesting at a gun show or being outside of a gun show would be something that would be helpful, or does that just stir up the hornets?
Teresa, I don't know what your experience with that is, but we have protested outside the county fairgrounds, those gun shows that they have, and it's not been particularly effective, I don't think.
Okay, stirs up the hornets more than anything.
You just kind of get that, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. People that go to those are not typically sympathetic to Moms Demand Action, if I may be so honest.
Please, exactly, yes. So Susie, what's on your mind?
Well, and protesting at a gun show by Moms Demand Action is not going to scare the pants off these people. I'm sorry. Maybe if we did something more like Planned Parenthood, you know, with those protesters that seem to have done a good job. Anyway, I wanted to ask Pete, if your group is going to contact legislators or help plan legislation to affect some changes.
Are you talking about the gun violence group or
Yeah.
the hospital entity?
No, hospital entities won't get in.
Yeah, we won't. We're non-political.
Yeah.
We stay. I can say the only speaking about legislation in regards to ammunition, back in the 90s, the American College of Surgeons solicited and lobbied for a change in ammunition that was actually being used by law enforcement, and I was in law enforcement at the time. We were using these jacketed hollow point Talon rounds that were designed to stop a threat, obviously stop an individual who was threatening great bodily harm or death to another. And those rounds were designed to stay within the body cavity of the intended target. And because they did that so effectively, they were very sharp shards, and surgeons were getting nicked and cut during operating procedures. And that was early on or into the whole HIV/AIDS thing. And so they lobbied to have those rounds outlawed for law enforcement, and that was actually effective. And but that's the only legislation that I've ever heard of in the last 20, 30 years. As far as the gun violence work group that I'm working with, I think we're working within the confines of the existing laws, and we're trying to work with strategies that don't need legislation, because you can't count on legislation from one party or another that's going to help. We have to do this on our own. So yeah, at this point, like I said, the group is pretty new, and we're formulating strategies and trying to get going. And so at this point, no, but I wouldn't rule it out, but I think we're trying to work with what we have.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions. If our panelists can stay around for a few more minutes, and then that will be that, and that will end for this evening. So Steve Early, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
My question is legislative or legal. Pima County has the gun shows out at the fairgrounds every year or twice a year. And why would anybody be restricted from having a table? Not outside, inside. I mean, we're all taxpayers, and so why wouldn't they give us a table? And so I don't care what kind of BS we have to put up with. I'm just saying, why would we have to do it outside?
So you're asking, so why wouldn't the Moms Demand Actions be able to get a table in the gun show?
Correct.
Okay.
Or a tent or a big flag or whatever.
Kelley, do you want to answer that? I think you did already, but maybe elaborate a little bit.
Well, I don't know that we couldn't. There may be a way that we could. We're not generally welcome at those kinds of things. We have put up quite a bit of a fuss about the fact that people who attend, or well, the gun show itself does cater to private sellers, and we have a problem with that. But you know, those are the ones that do not have to have a background check. So you might have a licensed gun dealer next to an unlicensed gun dealer, and guns are going out the door. We could probably appear there, but we are, you know, we would probably not be welcome at that venue, since we put up such a fuss there.
I've been unwelcome lots of places.
Well, yeah, You are unwelcome a lot of places. We are unwelcome in a lot of places, but you know, it just hasn't been something that we have really pushed for, I don't think.
Okay, thanks. So one more question. Rod Norris, if you wanted to go ahead and unmute and give us your video so we can see that smiling face and ask your question.
My question is there any hope in the near future for negotiation with organizations like the NRA to at least limit some of the military grade weapons that are used in these mass killings? Are they willing to negotiate at all or talk with groups like Moms Demand Action or anything? No.
I'm not sure if Kelley or Teresa could answer that.
Teresa might give a more professional answer.
Okay. I just know that Everytown and Moms Demand Action had, you know, at this time hasn't taken a stand against assault weapons. They may sometime in the future. So this would have to come from another organization and or from the federal level. So I don't know if I don't know if anyone has ever attempted before. I can't help but think that they haven't. But right now, I don't think that they're you know, open to listening to our types of organizations.
Okay, great. That was a great answer. Great panelists. Thank you so much. You've given us all so much to think about. And as far as I know, we're going to be able to get this recording out to, we'll have it on our website, dgt.org, in a couple of days. So you're more than welcome to check that out. And then I will send out the PowerPoint from Kelley's presentation to you folks that signed up with us tonight for your information. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate everybody that signed on. I hope everybody had got a lot of good information. And I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting and tell everybody to be safe. We're getting inundated with rain right now, so I'm glad that we're all home and safe. Thank you.